All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Chuck Black. I run the National Voter Friendly Campus program here at the Campus Vote Project. We are super excited for our monthly Voter Friendly Campus webinar, where we're going to talk about forging partnerships with local election officials. While we are a national program, we do state-based work in many states across the country. And I'm super excited to welcome a guest speaker for a conversation about working with your local election officials. But before we dive in with that, our program for today will do brief staff recognition. We'll briefly provide an update on the program. Then we're going to have a conversation with a county clerk, Barb Byram. Then we'll switch to the Fair Election Center side, and we'll share some of the available programming and resources that we have for campuses in working with their local election officials. And then we'll take questions. Also, when we do the conversation with the county clerk, while we do have some prepared questions, if people have questions, you can just feel free to put them into the chat. I've also made all of Campus Vote Project, who I've seen come in as co-host. So if all of you could watch the chat as well, that would be helpful for me. So in the chat, as people have come in, we've asked for your name, pronouns, your campus, or your org. And if you're at a campus, we asked if your campus works with local election offices. And then we asked everyone, have you served as a poll worker? So just a few introductions, and then we'll move into our conversation. If our two other CVP staff, Ryan and Jill, can introduce themselves as they'll be speaking later, that'd be great. So Jill, if you want to introduce yourself.
Got to unmute myself. So I'm Jill Olson. I am the Work Elections Fellowship Coordinator for the Fair Election Center's CVP. I use the she, her pronouns, and I am coming to you out of Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Awesome. And Ryan?
Hi, everyone. I'm Ryan Piranunzi. I'm the Work Elections Program Manager with Fair Election Center. I use he, him pronouns. I'm based in Washington, D.C. Good to see you.
Awesome. And again, my name is Chuck Black. I use he, him pronouns. I run the National Voter Friendly Campus program. So just a few brief VFC updates before we get to our special guest. If your campus has not submitted an action plan, please submit it by May 31st. If one of the CVP staff can drop in the website for the submission, that would be great. If your campus has not submitted a statement, you can still submit. And then I wanted to share that we will not have a June webinar. We hope people are taking vacations and enjoying the summer. So that is my brief update. So as we talk about working with local boards and local county clerks, we're super excited to have a conversation. I met Clerk Byram at the Michigan Summit in 2022. If you don't follow her on Twitter, I encourage it. I think she is a very, very active county clerk. So we really are excited because she has worked so great with campuses, and I was really inspired by her speech at the Michigan Summit. So when I was thinking what county clerk we should ask, Barb was the first, and her team said very they were very pumped up. So we're really excited for this conversation. So Clerk Byram, thank you for coming. And if you just want to start with a brief bio and share with us, how did you get into the job that you're currently in?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting. So my name is Barb Byram. When I graduated high school, I went to work for a tractor supply company. After that, I owned and operated my own hardware store. But my mom was a state representative, a state senator, and a state representative, and she was going to be term limited out of office. And in Michigan, we had term limits. We still do. They're a little bit different now than way back then. And she was going to be term limited out, and I was approached and asked to run for her seat. So in 2005, I think it was, I ran for state representative in the Michigan House of Representatives and was successful. I ran against my former middle school principal, and I was elected to office. So for 6 years, I served. I was reelected 2 additional times. So for 6 years, I served in the Michigan House. Then I was going to be term limited out of office, and the county clerk was making some interesting choices with taxpayer dollars. So I let him know that I had been approached to run against him in a primary, and he opted not to run for re-election. And then I ran for re-election. Now I ran for clerk with the background of being a manager. I, owned and operated a retail hardware store for 20 years, but also loving politics. And I thought to myself, well, how much different can election administration be from politics? Well, the answer to that is a lot, actually. So that's how I ran for county clerk. And I've been serving as the Ingham County Clerk in the great state of Michigan since 2013 now.
Awesome. I'm sure your Monday through Friday is filled with all different things. But if you could share with us a bit about your job, especially with any sort of outreach and things that involve.
Yeah, definitely. So every day is different, which is one of the things I love about this position. But my day is probably what you would expect it to be. It starts with a lot of coffee. And I have 2 offices. I have an office in Mason and an office in Lansing. Mason is our county seat. So I'm required by our state constitution to have an office at the county seat, but our population center is closer to the city of Lansing, which is also on a major bus line for our larger jurisdictions as well. And I bounce in between both offices. I take a whole lot of meetings, coffee meetings, and meetings throughout the day. Election side, I am programming the election, working on all of that. A lot of individuals believe that election is just a specified day, which is so far from the truth. It takes a good 2 weeks to program for an election, another week at least for ballots to be printed, another week at least for the ballots to be tested, for the programming to be tested. And then I support the local clerks. See, in Michigan, we really like local control in Michigan. And so it's the city and township clerks that run the day of election, the distribution of absentee ballots, as well as the early voting, which is new to Michigan. So typically that's the local clerks that do that. I, as the county clerk, am often just a resource to those local clerks during the time of election, but I do a lot of the back end work in the beginning, and I do a whole lot of the back end work at the end when we report unofficial results on election night, and then work with the Board of Canvassers, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, to canvass and ultimately certify the election. So that's some of the election stuff I do. I enforce campaign finance, which is fun. And then I also house all vital records, birth, marriage, death, and then concealed pistol licenses must be applied in my office. But in terms of my outreach to voters, I am often on campus. I have been at Brody Hall, which had the nice cafeteria. That's where most students wanted to eat. It's where I wanted to eat. So I've been at Brody Hall registering voters. I've been in front of the library registering student voters, and just making sure that I am as accessible as possible to our future leaders. So some of the ways I do that, of course, is by going to campus and meeting students where they are, but also being accessible on all of the social media areas. So I am on TikTok. My TikTok game is not good, but I am trying. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Insta. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook. I respond to emails. And I just try to make myself as accessible as possible so that when someone has a question, they have a resource to get a quick answer. Because typically when a question's asked, the answer is needed now. And I like to be as responsive as possible. I think that is very important as someone who wishes to encourage people to exercise their right to vote. I think it's important to be accessible to individuals as well.
Awesome. So thinking about your job, or, the jobs of election staff across the country, what can they do to help support young people, especially college age voters?
Yeah, I think it is imperative that we are accessible, and not just accessible by, if you come to our office, we'll answer your questions, but if you send us an email, a Twitter message, a TikTok message, that we are timely in our response, and that we actively keep in mind our younger voters, because our younger voters have had different experiences than some of our more seasoned voters. I remember hearing some clerks talk about how a voter didn't know where to buy a postage stamp. Well, our younger voters grew up during online classes. Email was much easier and available than in my generation. And so just because someone doesn't know where to get a postage stamp, we should not make fun of that, but rather embrace that and add that to our curriculum of how to educate voters to exercise their right to vote. I think it's imperative that we are accessible, but then also offensively accessible, in that I'm on the campus, I'm reaching out. For the 12 years that I have been county clerk, I have requested the president of Michigan State University, which is in my district. I am a graduate twice from the university, to send out voter information that I author. Unfortunately, they have not. Rather, they have had their own organization do it. But then also I have actively tried to get in the dorms to register voters in the dorms. And again, I have not been able to access dorm rooms to educate voters. So these are some of the struggles that I have, but these are the things that I do, and I work towards to support students voting on campus.
And I think it's unfortunate, I think, any of the pushback, but I think it's so important that you've really focused on supporting college age voters.
Yeah.
So moving to our next question, why should a campus want to partner with, say, your office or their local?
Well, because we are the experts. So county clerks are elected in Michigan. Local clerks are typically elected in Michigan. Some of them are appointed, but we operate nonpartisanly in our offices. We want every qualified registered voter to exercise their right to vote. If you are qualified, we want you to be registered to vote. And we have the information. And I think it is so important, especially for organizations that are working in this area, to first work with their election official, because we can provide the accurate information in regards to deadlines and other requirements in regards to voter registration and exercising your right to vote.
100%. So, and I shared this at the top, but at Campus Vote Project, we often use the phrase meeting students at, where students are at. And you're a person that definitely has a strong Twitter presence, and I'm sure on all the others as well. But can you talk about how you build up your social media presence and why do you use socials?
So I adopted Twitter, now called X, in the very beginning, and it was when I was in the legislature. It was a fun new social media platform that I enjoyed. I enjoyed Facebook when it first came out too, and it was fun at the beginning. And then it became significantly less fun, and that's when I started doing daily jokes just to start the day off in a good place. I've been using my Twitter handle as of recent to educate people on election law, and maybe to also educate them on some of their missteps in regards to campaign finance. It grew because I've been so active, and my followers grew because other election officials enjoyed some of my commentary. And so that was the reason why I started Twitter. I joined TikTok because I know that's where even younger people are right now. And TikTok is, I'm trying on TikTok. My TikTok game is not stellar, but I'm working on it. And the reason I do that is because I know that that's what younger voters are watching. They're on TikTok, and I feel as though it is incumbent upon me to make sure I'm on that platform providing election information to the younger population. So I think it's important that I continue to be there wherever students might be. So maybe it's not on campus, maybe it's on TikTok. But I think it's important that I avail myself to wherever the students are so that they can get the necessary information to exercise their right to vote.
Awesome. So we here at Campus Vote Project, we run a couple different programs to help encourage young people to work the polls. In your view, and where you sit, what kind of is there a push to get more young people to work the polls? Is there a space for young people, and why should young people sign up?
Yes, so there is absolutely space for younger individuals to serve as poll workers or precinct workers. There's a desperate need for younger people to serve in this respect, as we have electronic poll books and we have tabulators, and younger people are more comfortable around technology than some of our seasoned workers. So certainly young people would be welcomed. In my county in particular, we are in desperate need of Republican precinct workers. But we need more young precinct workers because our seasoned precinct workers are getting significantly more seasoned, and we need to train up their replacements. It's important for students to also become a precinct worker because they can learn how elections are run in their community, and there they can respond to election mis and disinformation by those election deniers. But also, in many respects, precinct workers are paid. They're not paid well, but they are paid. And so if you're looking for a little bit of spending money, it's not going to be a lot, but it'll be something. Certainly become a precinct worker.
So our next question it kind of ask it both ways. What have you found not helpful when you're trying to get information out to young people around voting? And then what have you found to be positive?
Yeah. So the most unhelpful is well-meaning organizations that show up and provide election information that is inaccurate. Whether it be they show up to the polling location on election night when polls are closing in a few minutes and there's a line and they're providing information, they showed up to volunteer to help because their heart was in the right place. They wanted students or individuals to exercise their right to vote, but they hadn't been properly trained to understand all of the intricacies of election administration. And so oftentimes that is more detrimental to the process than helpful. On the contrary, what I have found helpful is mainly the student-run organizations. The student-run organizations are more apt to reach out to the election administrator to get the right information first, or to send the information they wish to send out to the election administrator for us to review and say, yes, this is accurate. So certainly the student-run organizations seem to be more accommodating in regards to my concern of making sure that the election pushed out to voters, student voters in particular, is in fact accurate.
I think that's a super positive for Campus Vote project,
Yep.
that you, what was said about the college voter programs. So we know, unfortunately, there have been attacks against election workers all across the country. Have you encountered this yourself? And tell us how you respond.
Yeah, so I'm very fortunate in that no one has attacked me as a result of being an election administrator or election worker. Many of my colleagues have, and their responses have varied. Some have gone on to YouTube and posted a YouTube explanation of why the attacks were wrong. I think specifically of Tina Barton in Rochester Hills. And then others have stayed quiet, and then the attacks just continue to grow and the misinformation continues to grow. And some have left the field completely. Out of Michigan's 83 county clerks, actually over 36 of them have left since 2020. And with them goes decades of experience in election administration. So I haven't encountered any harassment or attacks as a result of being an election worker yet. But that also might be because I have a pretty well-established platform that if someone's going to attack me, a lot of people are going to know about it real quick. And that's not the case for most clerks. Most clerks do all of the work. They keep their head down. They work hard, making sure democracy continues. But I'm a little bit of a louder clerk, I think.
Which is, in my opinion, awesome.
Thank
So
you.
are there any questions for Barb? You can either come off mute or put it in the chat.
So if anybody ever thinks of anything, my email is clerkbyrum, CLERKBYRUM @gmail.com. And just because I'm a clerk in the state of Michigan doesn't mean that I don't have friends in Ohio or California that do the same thing that I do, and that's administration of elections. So I have a very large network, and I can typically find answers to your questions even when you are outside of the state of Michigan.
Awesome. So if people have questions, please put them in the chat. I want to ask just sort of one. Oh, I think someone. Yes.
Yeah.
Barb, if you want to.
Yeah, so I'm wondering how my office connects with students and how do I build a network like that. So I rarely say no when students want me to speak to their group. I've registered voters at the Rock on campus. And I think that's how I get my network of students is I meet them at events and they're engaged in election administration or protecting our democracy. We stay in touch. And when they need something, I oblige. And I think that's how I built my network. The difficulty is they leave after a couple of years. So I'm always trying to build again, because we want students to leave and do the great things. So that's how I've been building the network. But I know a lot of the organizations on campus, they do let their replacements know that I'm a resource as well. And I continue to follow the organizations on Twitter to just see what's going on and how I can help.
Awesome. And there's a second question in the chat.
Students groups to start building relationships. I don't think it is ever too soon or too late. There are elections in Michigan. We have 3 potential election days. We ended up having 4 this year, and there were actually 6 in some counties in the great state of Michigan. But it's never too early to start those relationships, and it's certainly never too late either. I mean, if you're starting a relationship with your election administrator on election day, it's not going to be as fruitful for that election as it will be for following elections. But I think it's important that we have those relationships and continue to pass the information down. So when I'm no longer clerk, the new clerk is going to need to know what organizations on campus to contact to make sure election administration is getting pushed out to students.
Awesome. Are there any more questions? And while we hold, if there's any others, we of course we're nonpartisan, but we end up having some of our young fellows end up running for town councils or whatever. What advice would you give to a young person who has thought about running for anything?
So first, if you're on this call, I expect you to run for office. So whether you're thinking about it or not, I expect you to run for office. Our democracy, our future depends on you stepping up and running for office. So first, that's first. Second, it is running for office can be costly. So you should be keeping track of everyone you are meeting in college. And everyone you had met in high school and everyone you're meeting at your jobs, because those individuals are going to be your kitchen table supporters that help you run for office. And so keep their contact information, have a central depository for all of that, so that when you do run for office, you can tap into that list of individuals who are going to support you in your endeavor. And it's imperative that we get more young people running for office, whether that is serving as clerk, as the election official, or running for school board or county commission, state rep, governor, and certainly president. We need more young people running for office, because you all bring a perspective that some of us seasoned people, most of us seasoned people, do not have. And your perspective is desperately needed.
100%. So if there's no other questions before you go, I just want to see if you have any final comments.
If I can ever be of any assistance, please do not hesitate to contact me. On Twitter, I'm Barb Byram. On TikTok, I'm still Barb Byram. And via email, it's clerkbyram@gmail.com. Any way I can be supportive or assist you, I would welcome the contact.
All right. Well, if we can give a virtual round of applause, we thank you. Thank you so much for coming to this conversation.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
Have a great day, Barb.
You too. Take care.
Thank you. So moving forward, we just want to kind of touch on some of the different available resources that we have here at Campus Vote Project in the Fair Election Center. I'm gonna actually take a risk real quick. I want to share my screen just to show you our page, and we actually are in the middle of a rebrand. So in the next month or so, the pages will be changing a little, but some of the all of this information will still be there. But I'm gonna I want to walk through with all of you just some of the available resources, because these are great things that you can share with your campus. So if you go to campusvoteproject.org, we have a bunch of different resources and tools, but the one I want to highlight when we're thinking about election officials and the really specific election details are the state student voting guides. We have a team of election attorneys here who part of their work is to constantly update and really keep on top of all the changes to election laws across the country. So if you go to our website and say maybe your school is based in Texas, but you have a student who wants to vote by mail in California, and you're not quite sure how you can provide that support. If you go to our website and you click on California, it's going to pull up when their primary is, when the general, all the different websites, what kind of IDs people need. Because as we know, voter ID is very different state by state. How can people vote in California? If they want to vote by mail, how does that work? So you can actually print, and it's a very nifty 2-page, 1-page guide that are available for all 50 states. And we get so many people that say how helpful these guides are. So I really encourage you to check out the Campus Vote Project website and look at our state voting guides. Another resource I want to share, I'm sorry I didn't have these up already. On the Fair Elections website, under resources, we have your Know Your Rights guide. And while these are only available so far in a couple different states, I'll share Pennsylvania because that's my home state. We distribute these guides to students of all the different rights they have when it comes to voting, your rights under federal law. What happens if you're challenged? What are the policies when it comes to voting in person? And of course, we remind people of the election protection hotline. So I really encourage you to make use of the Fair Elections website and the Campus Vote Project website, because there's a lot of tools that can be used to be very supportive of elections. So as many of you know on this call, we run a democracy fellowship. And this year we are expanding it to what we're calling the Work Elections Fellowship, which will really help campuses with their work around polling and making sure we have young people working as poll workers. So I'm going to introduce my colleague, Jill, who's going to speak a bit about the Work Elections Fellowship Program.
Thanks, Chuck. Yeah, so I am running the Work Elections Fellowship program for this election cycle. The Campus Vote Project is choosing to do this fellowship as a way to maximize the number of college student poll workers for the November election in 5 states where we have CVP campuses. So these states are Arizona, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Wisconsin. So we'll be offering both a supplemental fellowship for existing and new democracy fellows on campus, and then we'll also be offering a standalone Work Elections Fellowship that will allow students to participate in the poll worker recruitment process. So in addition to their campus's democracy work, the fellows will be able to layer in poll worker recruitment on their campus and also work to establish relationships where possible based off of election laws with their local election officials and their campus. I mean, as we've heard, like as a poll worker, students are given an opportunity to really understand the intricate process that underpins our democracy and the attention to detail that upholds that democratic integrity. So in addition, the presence of college-age workers at the polls can offer opportunities to broaden and diversify the pool of poll workers. And like Barb mentioned, it offers assistance with technology and also language support for election officials. So it's really an opportunity for those involved to make a direct impact on their election. So we will be running a fellowship program that will be set up in each of those 5 states, and each one of them will have a supervising fellow who will oversee and mentor 10 fellows in their state. The 10 fellows in each of the state, which we are starting to recruit soon, will work to directly recruit approximately 100 poll workers each from their campus. They'll do it through community connections, programming, tabling, kind of all of the tools we already use for our Get Out the Vote efforts. And their work will be supported through resources from the Work Elections Project, the Campus Vote Project, and Power the Polls. So it's really a great opportunity to help recruit poll workers for campus polling locations, and or community locations that are in need or have large student populations voting there. So we're going to start these fellows August 1st, and they will receive a $900 stipend at the end of the fellowship in December. So I really think this is a great opportunity for students to increase their engagement and gain an overall understanding of elections and the work surrounding them. Through research, they found that many poll workers indicate that they gain a strong sense of community when they work the polls, and that they actually gain confidence in the secureness of the process overall. And I think these are two great goals that we can hope students can gain through this participation. Like I mentioned earlier, recruitment for the Work Election Fellows is beginning soon. So if you're in one of the 5 states, Arizona, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Virginia, or Wisconsin, and this is something that you'd like some more information about, you can either reach out to the state coordinators that you work with, or you can reach out directly to me. So I'll drop my email in the chat for anyone who's interested. But that is the Work Elections Fellowship for the fall. So thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, Jill. If you could also put in the chat, I know you said them, but the 5 states where we'll be running this as well. So if there are any campus admins who have who are within those 5 states, if you have any people that you think would be a good fit, we certainly would love to have a conversation with them. So I want to now pass it. One of the other projects that we run here at the Fair Election Center is the Work Elections program. So my colleague Ryan will share a bit about this program. So I'll pass it to Ryan.
Hi, everyone. So Work Elections is a project that Fair Election Center started before 2020 as a way to centralize information on how to become a poll worker, regardless of where you live. And as you probably heard when the clerk was speaking, poll worker recruitment is very decentralized. It's done in most cases at the city and city and county level. So it can be very confusing for people to figure out, who do I need to talk to? Where do I go to apply? And we did this also as with the goal in mind of helping to diversify the pool of poll workers across the country. Historically, poll workers have been predominantly elderly, and not a lot of young people have been getting involved. So it was with the goal of helping to bring in new poll workers from a lot of different communities and backgrounds to better reflect the voting public. And there are concrete needs that that need to be met. People who speak multiple languages, people who are tech savvy, as technology becomes more, plays a larger and larger role in how elections are administered. These are all things that election administrators need help with. And so this was something that we thought would really be helpful in meeting those needs. And then, of course, when 2020 came around, it became an even greater issue with COVID. That year we co-founded Power the Polls, which you've probably heard of. And that's an organization that has a lot of different partnerships or partners taking part. There's nonprofit groups, there's businesses, a lot of celebrities have endorsed and helped get the word out about the need for additional recruitment for people to sign up. And that's been active now since 2020 and is going to be busy again this fall. But the nice thing about Work Elections is that it has detailed information for thousands of jurisdictions around the country. In some states, in Michigan, it's every city and town. So in Michigan, there's like 1,800 towns, right? So it can be a bit overwhelming for people to figure out where to go. This can help simplify that. And our data that we use and maintain is also shared with Power the Polls to further the impact that we can have on recruiting people to serve. So I'll be working with Jill to help support her and her team as we get closer to the election. But happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Ryan? And if you can drop your contact in the chat, email would be great, Ryan. All right, so if there are no questions, as we sort of just wrap this up, our hope with today's session, from our county clerk, Barb Byram, to our 2 Fair Election Center staff, we really hope you consider how can your local election officials be supportive of your work on your campus, but also understand that goes both ways. So we definitely encourage you to reach out and partner with them, and welcome them to your campus. We also understand not everyone's going to be like Barb Byram, but we do want to encourage that you make that ask and try to include them in the work you have on campus. So we really appreciate your time and your support here at the Voter Friendly Campus program. As a reminder, there will be no June webinar. We'll be busy reviewing your action plans. And if there's no further questions, this concludes our May webinar. Thank you.